So I want to acknowledge, first of all, that there is this ongoing tug of war between privacy, security, and access. But first, I want to put out a little bit of foundational thinking. Some of the ways that, so I'm a security person. I come out of security and privacy first. I'm new to the information industry. As Todd said, my wife has been a librarian for many years, so I've some pretty good exposure. But my thinking is around security and privacy primarily, and as we started to talk and spend a lot of time with librarians, with publishers across the industry, I started to set out some baselines to try and frame the privacy discussion and the security discussion. First of all, data will always be collected. We're in an information world. Some artifact is always going to be there. Second, collection does not necessarily equal a privacy violation. It has to be, you can collect it, but you have to use it poorly or not protect it or expose it or not be transparent about how you're using it in order to have collection turn into a privacy issue. There have to be clear principles for use and sharing by any entity, be it a university, be it a publisher, be it an aggregator, or anyone else. It has to serve, the purpose has to serve the researcher. At the end of the day, we're all in the industry to serve, we're all in this business to serve researchers, and what we do needs to serve some of our own interests as publishers and as technology entities, but also we have to serve the researchers. If you collect it, use it wisely, and get rid of it when you're done. This is a fundamental tenet of the security industry. But Todd opened up with, it all comes down to trust. We have to build an environment in which all three parties, libraries, publishers, technology service providers, are able to be trusted amongst each other, and that comes through a lot of ways. So there's tension. If you haven't already seen it, C&I put out a talk, I believe it was from December, from Sam Combe at Claremont, on privacy in the surveillance era. I'm not going to go deep into it, but it's a really interesting watch, a really interesting listen, because it really frames the view that researchers have about how data is used and collected. And this talk is just within the own institution, not even extending out to the service providers that service the industry. But it really does frame the discussion very well of anything I do can be used against me in some way. I have an inherent distrust of any data that's collected. How could it be used to collect Wi-Fi information to see who is doing specific searches? So this is part of what we need to take into account as we're developing future technology stances for both providing access and providing additional value-added services for researchers and for librarians. So there's always a triangle. The librarians, the copyright owners, and the researchers. And I apologize, apparently my fonts from my Mac did not transfer over very well. So historically, the librarians have been a middle ground for researchers, between researchers and copyright owners. There's this increasing trend toward having a more direct relationship with the researchers, be it through Google, be it through Sci-Hub, or what have you. But of course, there's concern that the librarians have. And the librarians are looking out for their researchers, for their patrons and researchers in ways around privacy, around enabling and filtering, getting them access to good content, as we've talked about. And this poses, again, part of the challenge. And so I'll take it, the same triangle, but look at it in a slightly different way around access, security, and privacy. Security really does cause a lot of friction when it comes to access. The comment earlier about IP authentication, it really does make life easy. When you talk to researchers, they don't see a problem with it when it comes to access today because IP authentication is so easy. But at the same time, it really does put the content at risk. It makes a lot of this too available. And actually, I'll actually counter a point that I heard earlier. We're actually seeing an increasing amount of content going out to Sci-Hub through IP authentication. Shared usernames and passwords are still very prevalent, but we're actually seeing more and more going out through IP authentication, which means there's pieces in the institution that are affected. So we have to we have to do something to move beyond IP authentication. There's, of course, this friction between access and privacy. If we move beyond IP authentication, if we move to something a little more uniquely identifiable, there is additional data that's collected. How do we maintain the privacy of that? And then, of course, the perpetual balance between security and privacy. We see this in the non-technology world. As you go through the airport, as you walk with cameras down streets, cameras watching you in every city that you're in technology as well. How do we take a conscious view of the balance between security and privacy? How much do we want to secure it, and how much do we want to protect the privacy? And a lot of this comes out in transparency. We need to do what we say we're doing. We need to be clear about what we're doing, who we're sharing it with, what we're collecting, how long we're keeping it, and what we're doing with it. So I'll take a plug. This very happy person is very happy because there's a number of efforts that have gone underway previously around creating frameworks for privacy. The ALA has established some privacy guidelines for ebook lending and digital content vendors, and NISO has also put together a framework for protection of digital privacy in library publishers and software providers. They're both really pivoted around the notion of transparency and clarity and shared accountability. And then as we move into more technical solutions, there's a move towards single sign-on. We're seeing this in our own institutions as we have single portals that are the pivot point for access to all third-party applications that we use as employees or as professors or as staff in institutions that our institutions belong to. The move to use this for access to scholarly content also is driving forward. And just an example of how this goes, a user goes to a site, they get to a service login page, it redirects back to the institution, to the common page that they're used to, the University of Wisconsin login page, whatever ABC Corporation login page that they're used to seeing that may already be logged in because they've already used another service. They authenticate with their credentials, and it heads them right back to the site to do research. This flow is very common to what you may know as SAML, which is an industry standard that's continuing to increase adoption for single sign-on access. It's also the underlying technology underneath Shibboleth. At the same time, and wow, those really did not come out beautiful on the translation from Mac to PC. There's also an effort underway called RA21. STM is, and NISO are co-sponsoring a project around resource access for the 21st century. So how do we take these technologies and as an industry do consistent things to get people to get over the humps of unhappy WAIF pages for Shibboleth, or consistent use of SAML, or the ability to take a credential and use it across industry suppliers, and do it in a way that protects the privacy of the patron. These are activities that are underway now, so if you have interest in participating, please go to ra21.org and sign up to be included. There's an open call for participants. But at the end of the day, what we want to get out of this is some consistency as an industry and give a way to give access on a more individualized basis. We've defined some of the privacy parameters that go along with it, and make it so that the move away from something like IP authentication is not so painful to the researcher. This comes back to that balance between security and access. We know that there's going to be a little more friction. We want to try and reduce that as much as possible. But at the same time, copyrighted content, protected content is important to protect, because if it's not there, then there is nothing to research. The world does need that content to be managed the way that the copyrights are intended. One other advancing technology is around blockchain. This is currently used in Bitcoin, but it's seeing additional use in non-financial transactions. The notion here is that there is a common ledger, a common writable ledger that tracks every transaction. And it does it in a way that is anonymous. It just adds so take a document, you apply blockchain to it. Every time it's moved from person to person or opened, an additional item goes in the register. It has the potential for having usage statistics that go along with it, has the advantage of being able to see who went through it, perhaps not identifying them by name, but knowing if you have repeat users or institutional. Has the potential to apply metadata to it that is still depersonalized. There's a lot of opportunity here. This is a growing place. It's not mature, it's not done yet, but it's an area where we're starting to put some thought. I come back to balance. Balance is key to all of this. There's no such thing as there is such thing as a perfectly secure, perfectly impenetrable system, and it's off and unplugged and somewhere where you can't get at it. Not really useful. So of course you have to balance these things with the utility of that which they're providing. We have to make it so that it's easy for people to use, but at the same time protecting the content and protecting the privacy of the people that use the content to the appropriate level. Transparency, I cannot stress this enough, being clear about what we do with data we keep, with how we're using it, with what people access, with it, just being upfront about it. There is a statistic, Pew Research did a study late last year, 72%, I believe is the number, of people surveyed had complete distrust of Facebook. Not because of what Facebook collected, but because Facebook did not disclose what they did with the information. But yet they still use the system, of course. But what it indicates is that there's a move toward wanting to know how information is being used and how it's being protected. And so therefore, I think I'd advocate it's in our best interest to be very transparent about what we're doing and who we're sharing with and how we're collecting information so that our users will want to use it. And that becomes part of the value statement of why you use this over something like Sci-Hub. We have no idea what Sci-Hub is doing with information that they collect about what people are researching. There may be things under the covers that are happening, but we just don't know. But at the end of the day, again, there's a huge, huge piece of trust in this. We need users to trust us. We need libraries to trust us. We need publishers to trust us, or each other. And that really does start to make this a much more viable model to move away from some of the traditional authentication mechanisms and do it in a way that protects privacy, maintains security, and protects the content. Thank you.